What's up, YouTube? Rubito here, and now I'm going to bring you a review of Def Jam Icon. Now, I'm going to do this since this is the only one that I can name off the top of my head when it comes to the worst of this generation of console, and also out of being a fighting game fan. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Now, when you start off the game, you'll see the following: create a label, which is the story mode, exhibition mode, music player, local versus, Xbox Live versus, and the usual options. But let's just start out with create a label. Now, when you get started, you can have the option to create your own personal character. Do whatever you're liking. But the problem with this is so horribly flawed without any bit of anybody else's formula, which you can search off the internet or look up local videos on YouTube and creating one. Your chances are of making one is definitely high, and you might end up creating the most ugly motherfucker in the face of the virtual world. Now, your options are Caucasian, African American, Asian, and Hispanic races, with a setting of one's weight, height, muscle mass, fat, eye color, hair color, the works. Now, when you're done with all that, in comes the move sets. Ghetto Blaster, which is mixed martial arts. Street Kwando, which is another name for Taekwondo, which is a stupid name. Black Panther, which is Kung Fu, but I probably bet it's Panther Kung Fu. Move Fly for Muay Thai. Beatboxing for boxing. And Jawbreaker for capoeira. After creating your character, you dive right into the story, where you first start off where you're clubbing and someone has got to be the biggest dick in the block happens to run into you, spilling something expensive onto your poorly designed shirt. So your character calls him off. The other guy goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" And you two get into a big fight. And then you win. Then a record label owner named Curtis Carver calls you up to his private lounge thinking, if you can slam someone's head onto a floor, you're a master of spinning record sales. Perfect plan there, genius. Right after that cutscene, you're introduced to your very first house, and you're provided with, and it's somewhat of a shithole. I can tell you no otherwise. It's a real shithole. But then, it's off to one of the other meats of the game, Label Manager. It sounds good in paper, but it's ultimately flawed for several reasons. Depending on what you do from the very beginning is a major factor when it comes down to it, to where either you're extremely poor where you can't even do anything, or extremely rich where you can bribe all your way to triple platinum with showing a little bit of greed and with your own brand of shitty lyrics. Next comes the clothes. And now it's the same as the other Def Jam games, including Fight for New York, but it's a little bit limited. Anyways, back to the story, where you have to recruit singers for your new label, ranging from beating up paparazzis, flexing muscle to rival singers, and at other times, you gotta be one of your singers to protect your rep to your homies. After all that comes the following: the girlfriend that's not a one-night stand, and believe me, you do get girlfriends on that game, which end up being a one-night stand. The rival record owner, who's basically Anthony Anderson, who this time isn't no nerd or relative to a schizoid father, or cracking no jack. Sorry, catching no jack, and a crooked cop. Now, about midway through the story, after you made yourself the made man of the music industry, viva fist to the face, Carver gets gunned down on the grassy knoll while you take the heat for it. And if that isn't enough to rub the salt on the wound, so does Anderson's death on your head by no other. I'll give you a minute to figure it out if you haven't. Spoilers! It's the cop! Yeah! Like I couldn't see that for a mile away! And guess who's the accomplice? Oh shit! It's your ride or die chick! More shit comes along, you beat up the cop, girlfriend gets shot, you rule the kingdom with an iron fist. Doesn't it sound ultimately familiar? Next comes is the gameplay itself, and frankly, you're going to need a set of boots to step through this sea of shit. Now, you have your basic buttons or layout, light and heavy punches and kicks, throws and blocks, and a newest addition which basically breaks the game entirely on where you are at and where the radius of the blast is going to be. I'm talking about is the turntable. That's right. If you throw someone into the radius and you do it right, it's instant cheap damage with hardly any way to dodge it unless you're quick on your feet and lucky enough to move away. But what really makes the turntable and the rest of the game completely broken to all hell is, yes, the AIs who used it. If you think Shaq Fu or Rise of the Robots beforehand, it fits well into that section of broken programming. Well, let's start with the basics. What the AI tends to abuse, the punches. Whenever it's his song or your song playing in the background, the AI cheats its way to make sure he gets the first shot, whatever it takes, and with you with more frustration building up. No matter what new techniques or whatever style you're using, it's all unfairly about the AI's first strike or his dick size rather than yours, and you will basically see this in later parts of the story mode where it gets harder and harder and harder. There are two things the AIs like to abuse as well: the throwing and the turntables. The throwing is just turning you into an unfortunate victim, which happens to be you, the player, or player, just to set you up to go all beatbox up in the piece to shove megatons of sound up your ass. That doesn't help that the engine is basically made for boxing games, and that alone is not something that's for MMA or / street fighting type games. And also, yes, this engine is based off the one from Fight 9 Round 3. Also another game from EA. Assholes. Since I'm hitting the 9-minute mark, might as well close part 1 here and click on the part 2.